Well, as I mentioned before, Dodge Billingsley is no stranger to the Kennedy Center. We're very grateful to have him back. As director of combat films and research, he began covering conflict in 1993, work that's taken him to many wars in contested regions, including Bosnia, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Peru, Bolivia, Eastern Turkey, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Western China, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Chechnya. Dodge Billingsley splits his time between documentary film, writing, lecturing, and consulting. His most recent publication, Fangs of the Lone Wolf, Chechen Tactics in the Russian-Chechen Wars from 1994 to 2009, is hot off the press from the United States Marine Corps. Just received my copy today. Thank you very much. And he's also the author of Operation Anaconda, America's First Major Battle in Afghanistan. Obviously, he's produced a number of films in the Beyond the Border series. Some of those titles include Chechnya, Separatism or Jihad, and Global Car. In 2003, he was a finalist for the prestigious Rory Peck Award for Best Feature for his film Virgin Soldiers, which follows a squad of Marines during Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. In 2002, he won the Rory Peck Award and the Royal Television Society Award for Best Feature for House of War, which documented the battle for Kwalajangi Fortress in Afghanistan, where he was one of the few foreigners on hand at the prisoner revolt that took the life of CIA agent Mike Spann. He has received numerous awards and lectured widely around the world. He's published also in Jane's Intelligence Review and the Harriman Review, received a MacArthur Regional Security Travel Grant for his work in Abkhazia, and is an avid collector of socialist and social realism art. You may be interested to know his part of his extensive collection is on display currently at the Woodbury Art Museum, which is located at University Mall. Global Spotlight Russia Pastoralism and Military. The pastoralism exhibit is up now, October 16th through December 15th, and the military exhibit will be January 19th through March 2nd. There are posters available here in the Kennedy Center. You can find more online at the Woodbury Art Museum. Today, Dodge Billingsley is lecturing, and we'll just briefly be discussing the making of our latest Beyond the Border film, Unfortunate Brother. Please join me in welcoming Dodge Billingsley.
I have no script today because we're going to show a cut of the film Unfortunate Brother, the question of reunification of Korea. And first off, again, I should say it's always great to be here at the Kennedy Center. And I hope you have an interest in Korea. It's a fascinating topic. But I want to just spend about 5 minutes and tell you what you're going to see, sort of set it up a little bit. In 2000, well, as Corey mentioned, we have, the Kennedy Center has a series called the Beyond the Border series, and we've done a number of programs, global issue programs, and I think this is our eighth program, or possibly our 9th. And we decided to look at Korea, but when we decided to look at Korea, what does that mean? I mean, what about Korea are we going to look at? So we started tapping local expertise here, of course. Jeff Ringer has a Korea background. Professor Mark Peterson here up on the front row, playing a game or texting somebody. Also has Korea expertise. You're texting me. My phone's over there. Okay. Mark is the resident Korea expert here, of course, and we have Eric Heyer also on the front row, Professor Heyer, who with extensive China. He's eating his lunch. Anyway, we sat around numerous round tables and we decided to try to figure out what we were going to do. I made my first trip on the Korean periphery in 2009 with Eric Heyer, Professor Heyer, as we went to Jinling province and went to Yanji, China, which is the middle of the Korean Autonomous Prefecture. And we started interviewing and talking to ethnic Korean but Chinese citizens. This is just north of the North Korean border. We also drove the North Korean border all the way down to the end along the Tumen River, where Russia and North Korea blocked China from having access, to the sea there. And we just did a little, it's kind of a little drive-by sort of thing. We went to Heaven Lake, Mount Paektusan, which is sacred territory for Koreans, although half of the lake is on Chinese, and half that mountain is on Chinese territory. The next year, we went to Korea with Mark Peterson and the Korea Society, and we traveled extensively all throughout South Korea. And what I got from these two trips was we still needed some sort of focal point of the program. And one of the things we decided on in the end was to look at the issue of unification not only through the lens of South Koreans and how they think of it, but because North Korea is a black hole when it comes to accessing information and having access to their citizens, to also look at some North Korean or get the experiences from North Korean defectors who had now arrived in South Korea. And there's another gentleman who's going to arrive late to this, who just flew in from Korea. His name is Hubert, who helped us, really helped us find North Korean refugees now living in Seoul to speak with, and we ended up focusing on a Mr. Lee. And this film revolves around Mr. Lee as the character, and then also the issue of reunification and what it was like in North Korea. Now, I have to say something about Mr. Lee. One of the issues with North Korean defectors is they don't like to be on camera. They fear North Korean reprisal. So Mr. Lee is a bit of an activist, which means he's in the public spotlight more, so he's willing to actually be on camera. At the same time, we weren't allowed to speak to his wife. We never really focused on her. He's just really worried. And if they're not worried for themselves, they're worried for their families back in North Korea, their extended families. So they're very careful. I know that just a few weeks ago, we had Barbara Demick here talking about her book, Nothing to Envy, where she tracked the lives of, I think, half a dozen North Korean. It's a fascinating book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. So that's the kernel of the story. Now, when writing a book or a television show, a documentary, I do not control the means of distribution, which means when we were looking for a distributor, we found one, HDNet, and we did on the HDNet World Report series, which automatically meant that as we turned that program over to their producer, they had a say in the final outcome of the show. Sadly for us, we were working on a 45-minute piece, an HDNet World Report, received the word from HDNet headquarters that the World Report series would be canceled. Because of their obligations to us and other producers they were working with, we still ran with the show, but our show was cut from 45 to just around 30 minutes. They took out big blocks, and we had to go and salvage the story. Obviously, if you're writing a paper and you have a paragraph, 6 paragraphs, you pull out 3 in the middle, the one above and the one below sometimes just don't go back together like they should, so it became a huge rewrite. But what I want to show you is the HDNet version. So that was 30 minutes long, because we want to have time to talk, and I want you to have time to talk to Mark Peterson and Eric Heyer, myself, afterwards if there's any questions. So there's 2 factors I wanted to just set up. Again, one is how we come to the topic idea, and 2, how a final program is shaped. And if you've done, I don't know, I mean, every documentary is the same way. We did something for National Geographic a few years ago, and parts of it came back and it didn't even look like ours. We had much more power editorially for this one, but again, we lost 15 minutes just due to scheduling and the way it worked. But it's still a nice film. It plays in a half an hour, and it fits perfectly for this format because that means we can watch it and still have time to talk about it. Mark, we had to cut a great deal of you out of the film, so you'll have to wait for the longer version.
You have to pay me scale anyway, though.
Yes, see Jeff or Corey. So with that, we're going to show the film, and hopefully, like I say, it'll end at time, so we'll have time, about 10 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes to talk about it if you would like afterwards, and I hope there'll be some questions and some comments. Thank you. Okay, we have 5 minutes before, I know a lot of you will want to go. I want to introduce Hugh Hubert. Hubert, will you stand up? And I'm sure, obviously, that's not your Korean name. If you want to tell everybody, he helped immensely with the film. He actually located Mr. Lee for us. He just is in town doing what? I don't know. He showed up yesterday. You have a mic right there.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is He Yong-hwan. That's my Korean name, but I also go by Hubert. I arrived here town last Friday, and I attended the church conference Sunday morning, and then I spent the time in Yellowstone and had a meeting with the BYU President, Idaho President Clark, and I'm here today. I'm so fortunate to be here on time to see the film, and just glad to meet you.
Thanks, Hubert. And again, I introduced Mark Peterson already, and we have a few minutes. If there's any questions or comments or anything you'd like to discuss, and it could be obviously to me or to Mark or to Hubert or any of us. So again, thank you very much for watching the film.
Just raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you. And then tell us your name and what you're studying. Sky?
Sky Herrick, International Relations. How does Japan feel about the possibility of a united Korea?
That's a great question. Didn't make the final cut, but we talked a lot about that. You want to go?
Well, better than me, Eric Heyer or Kirk Larson would be better qualified to answer that question. What do you think? Does Japan want to see a unified Korea? What are the pluses? What are the minuses?
I've never probed that question with Japanese.
Oh yeah, I should introduce Kurt Larson. You want to?
Passing the mic around. The short-term obstacle to that is the issue of abductees in North Korea. Until the Japanese government and the North Korean government can solve that, they can't even think about sort of moving on to anything else. But one interesting long-term implication of unification for Japan is that Japan normalized relations with South Korea in 1965, in which they said, if we give you $800 million, we have paid all of our debt for all the excesses of Japanese colonial rule. You can make a strong argument that a unified Korea would say, that's off the table now, let's go back to the issue of comfort women and forced labor and all these other things, and let's revisit it in a way that Japan would have to pay a lot more today. And so that might be one reason why Japan might not be that excited about seeing it anytime soon.
There's also the competition factor that South Korea alone is a competition with Japan in the world market, and a stronger, bigger Korea, a unified Korea, would be even more of a threat to Japan. So I don't suppose Japan is too excited to see unification in Korea. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Thank you. Hannah Wheelwright. I'm studying political science. So I didn't know until watching this film that South Korean youth they said that caring less and aren't as concerned about North Korea as their older generation. But I was curious to hear, is there evidence that people in North Korea are starting their own reunification efforts, perhaps organizing locally, providing some kind of local push on the government? I know that it's much harder in their political system, but if the push for unification isn't likely to come from South Korea, is it likely that we will see some kind of grassroots efforts in North Korea to push for unification, or is it going to be more of the film mentioned that they don't want to become like East Germany and lose those kind of rights? Is there evidence that will happen in any case?
Well, again, Kirk could probably give us a better answer on this, and let me give the mic to Kirk after I make a comment or two. But it seems to me that at one level in North Korea, they've already achieved partial unification. That is to say, they celebrate June 20th. Is it June 20th? June 25th. June 25th. No, that's the Korean War. June 20th. May 20th. There's a date. We don't even know what it is in the South, but there's the date that Kim Dae-jung went to North Korea. June 15th, that's right. June 15th, 10 days before the anniversary of the Korean War. Yeah, June 15th is a big holiday in North Korea. They put it on stamps. When they do the stadium, hold up the placards, everybody has they do these grand designs of holding up the placards in the stadium. They have that of June 15th. June 15th is the day of unification. So at one level, they think they've already taken the first step toward unification, that they're on their way, and that if we only get a more enlightened South Korean president, get that right-winger Lee Myung-bak out of there and get a nice, good liberal like Kim Dae-jung or No Moo-hyun in there, that we can take further steps toward unification. So in a sense, they think that they're on their way in the North. But I think there's also an element in the North is like the element in the South. It's 60 years already. What are we going to do? What kind of unification are we talking about? And culturally, they're becoming more and more diverse. Just another note, just because we're out of time, just throw another thought in here, is that the South Korean pop culture, this K-pop stuff that's taking off, and you know about Psy and the Gangnam Style and all this stuff. I don't know about Psy and Gangnam Style, but these dancing girls, the girls' generation, these K-pop girls, that has a tremendous impact in North Korea. And a lot of North Koreans are seeing that South Koreans are not only rich, they're cool. They're sexy. And I think a lot of North Koreans are being impacted by this K-pop, and that they really want the South Korean culture, which is a material culture, which you don't get in socialist North Korea. And I think that K-pop might have a bigger impact on unification than the economic boom in the South.
If I may say, back to your question, I heard that from Mr. Lee, one of the defector in the interview. A small group of the North Korean elite, young generations, they, it's not visible, but the underground movement, But anytime soon, when the small power here and there, when they are combined, that could be another possible power. And also, as Dr. Peters mentioned, that the young groups, they're getting messages through their relatives in China, through the border, because North Korean defectors living in South Korea, they keep sending monies to North Korea through Chinese border, through the agent. Agent, they get paid for that. So they deliver CDs and DVDs. So the influence still keep going to North Korea. Yeah.
Just one quick comment on one aspect of the question was asking, will there be a grassroots movement to push things in North Korea? Right now, that's not how North Korea works. North Korea probably has the least amount of civil society organizations of any place in the world. You can't have a grassroots organization. If you do, it's illegal. And so the likelihood of a situation where the North Korean people, because they like K-pop and because they aspire for a better standard of living and so on, it has to be much more radical and revolutionary if they're going to have their voices heard. You can't simply organize a group of people at the local level and say we want unification group. It's just simply not allowed at this point.
You can't have a grassroots movement if you don't have any grass. That's right. Yeah.
Any other questions or, yes, sir. She'll bring the mic right to you.
I'm Sam Nuzet. I'm studying computer science. I noticed that Mr. Lee gave a very Christian prayer, but from my understanding in North Korea, as in most tightly controlled socialist countries, like religion isn't a very big thing. So I was just curious as to like how he discovered Christianity.
Well, two things. Do you know about his conversion to Christianity? There's an underground Christian movement in North Korea, and there's home churches, and it's suppressed, but there is Christianity. And as you may know, Pyongyang, North Korea, was the largest, most successful revival Christian group in Korea, more so than in Seoul. So North Korea has a lot of Christians. Kim Il-sung's grandmother, we know, was a Christian. And there's a dissertation written by, I think it was Richard Tate, who wrote a master's thesis on the Christian undertones in Kim Il-sung's Juche philosophy. And so there is an influence of Christianity in the North, but more apropos of Mr. Lee in the South, he talked about, or the film talked about, the networks in the Underground Railroad within China. And for someone to get out of North Korea into South Korea takes about a year or so to work their way through China to get to Vietnam, to get to Mongolia, are the two ways to get out. Some other embassies will let you out, but to get to those countries is what they have to do to get repatriated or to get into South Korea. And a lot of that underground network is run by Christians. And so along the way, Christianization can take place. And then when you get to South Korea, there are a lot of Christian groups that help the North Koreans. So I don't know when he became a Christian. Do you know?
He is not. He didn't become a fully Christian yet, but churches, Presbyterian churches mainly in Korea, they use. They do a lot of proselyting for North Korean defectors. So they set up a camp, along the border, and also when they come to South Korea, they provide a lot of materials and the shelters like that. So Mr. Lee, he goes to church here and there a little bit. He even came to my church, Shindang World, a couple times. Baptizing. I'm working on it. And the churches in North Korea that I know through him and through another minister, Kim Shin-jo, is kind of propaganda. The church in North Korea, they have one or two in Pyongyang, but it's kind of fake church, only to show the visitors, those who come to North Korea.
Mark, you might mention a little about the history of Christianity in Korea, the role it played was so dominant.
Well, Korea is the most Christian country in Asia outside of the Philippines. And the Christian movement, especially the Presbyterians, Catholics also, have had a very successful history in Korea. Well, I might also mention Kim Shin-jo, who didn't make the final cut, is an interesting guy. He's a defector from North Korea. Forced defector. He came on a suicide squad to South Korea to assassinate Park Chung-hee and to escape back to North Korea. It wasn't really a suicide squad. They were going to escape. It turned into a suicide squad because all 31 of them were killed except for him. And he stayed on in South Korea and eventually turned and saw that South Korea is a better place, lived in South Korea, participated in the South Korean economy, and married a South Korean woman who was a very fervent Christian, and he becomes a very strong Christian and becomes a minister. He goes to minister school at like age 40, and he's a South Korean Presbyterian minister now. So that's, there's a connection between North Korean defecting and turning into Christianity. It's not an obligatory thing, but it happens a lot of times. It's like Koreans that come to America. The Christianity rate in Korea is about 30%, but among Korean Americans, like 80%. And the reason for that is the Korean network in America is very successful of incorporating people into their network because, you know, if you're in an immigrant situation, you come to America, where are you going to buy a car? Where are you going to get insurance? Your roof leaks, who's going to fix you? You know, it's a network that helps people to immigrate and get around and get licenses and legal help and all the sorts of stuff that you need. So Christianity is a very useful thing, don't you know?
Anything else? Yes, ma'am. Hold on.
I guess I might as well, since you're sticking around. My name is Amy Gillette. I'm sociocultural anthropology, and this question is just to the general panel. I know the video talked a lot about why it's pretty much unfeasible to do unification now between North Korea and South Korea. The costs are just too high. But it mentioned that they hope in time that the opportunity will arise. I'm struggling to see how time is going to improve the situation. Do you have any ideas why?
That's interesting. Well, let me just comment on this. This is not a direct answer to your question, but you're asking about unification. Neither side really wants it right now, and that's quite clear. And South Korea has done certain things to prop up North Korea economically to keep them going. South Korea could be more instrumental in a stranglehold on, embargoes. When the United States wants an embargo because of launching a missile or testing another nuclear device or whatever, the United States always says, let's strangle them some more. And we're already strangling them pretty good, but South Korea doesn't get involved with that so much. They don't want to strangle North Korea. They want them to survive because they don't want this explosion of refugees onto their economy. So, yeah, I don't know. Neither side wants unification now. I think that the most likely aspect or chance for unification would be an internal revolt in North Korea. If I were a North Korean general and wanted to make a name for myself in history, and I had guns, I'd take over and sue for peace with the South and be known as the general that saw unification of Korea. And if some general down there catches that idea and he's got a gun in the right place at the right time, but they don't trust anybody. You see generals are cashiered all the time. You know, if they suspect someone is not quite 100% loyal, you have to be 110% loyal, or you could be sent off. So who knows? On the other hand, unification could happen tomorrow. You know, a series of events, the thing could just fall apart. But I don't know. We ought to get a book on it and see who could win the pool here. I don't know.
The hope of the South Koreans under Roh Moo-hyun and Kim Dae-jung was that if you embrace North Korea and engage with it, you can encourage North Korea to reform its economy, raise its standard of living, and sometime, maybe a few decades in the future, you would have a situation in which unification wouldn't be so expensive because the gap of standard of living between North and South wouldn't be as great. It didn't really turn out that way. And now the only hope for time making it more likely is that North Korea will finally listen to the Chinese, who have been constantly telling the North Korean leadership, you need to reform your economy the way that we did. You can still hang on to political power, you can still be an authoritarian regime, but you can open up the economy, and then again, standards of living goes up, and you know, people's lives are better. Again, getting to sort of the same end goal, a smaller gap between the standards of living in North and South. The problem is, the more years that wear on, the fewer people that remember what a unified Korea was like and why they would even want it. And more they start to get used to the idea of, sure, we're the same people, we have the same blood, the same history, the same language, but we've had two states for so long, why we need to change that situation? So the longer you wait for economic change, the more likely it is that attitudes won't eventually want it, even if it is more economically feasible.
If you're interested in North Korean things, Kirk's teaching a class on North Korea right now. So, and he'll welcome auditors for the last half of the class if you're interested.
Anybody else wants? Eric?
This is a technical question, Dodge, for filmmakers. Why did you decide to do voiceover rather than subtitles?
Because we live in America, no one wants to read.
They can't read.
Well, actually, no, that is the truth. I mean, when you look at distribution, there's very few channels like Nat Geo or Discovery or any of these that will actually put a subtitle in. It's not really the status quo, and that's their research tells them Americans don't want to read. I prefer subtitles because I believe you hear the inflection, the way people speak. Even if you can't understand the language, you still get an idea of like the emotion behind things, but you lose it all with that. But that is when you broadcast, that's what you do. Now, we have a screening version, a DVD version that we'll be putting out that's going to be about 15 minutes longer, and we've always subtitled, and I think we'll probably subtitle again. Because I think it's more, I mean, yes, it's more academic, but I do think that people will still read it. But that's just the broadcast way it goes in the United States. They have a different documentary tradition in Europe. They do a lot more subtitling, but here we don't. So.
Let me call it there. Thanks, Dodge Billingsley, and our panel, formal and informal.
Yeah, and thank you for attending.